Hi, I'm Ken Donaldson, Senior Research Fellow in the Surgeons' Hall Museum. This tale is about Dr. Robert Knox, who was the head of our museum between 1825 and 1831, but he's best known as the customer who bought the bodies supplied by the serial killers Burke and Hare for dissection in his private anatomy classes. Although suspicion fell upon Knox that he must have known such fresh bodies were victims of murder, he was never tried. Most people know about Knox only in this regard, but he was an interesting, if flawed, individual, and so here are 7 interesting facts about Dr. Robert Knox that you didn't know. Fact number 1. By common consent, Robert Knox was the greatest anatomist of his generation, being an extremely talented and brilliant teacher, writing many books and articles on anatomy. Before beginning teaching anatomy in the Barclays School and becoming head of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh's museum, he travelled widely in South Africa as an army surgeon and studied anatomy in Paris under the famous anatomists and naturalists Georges Cuvier and Etienne Saint-Hilaire at the Jardin du Plant in Paris. Fact number 2. Robert Knox knew he was the greatest anatomist of his generation. Knox was extremely arrogant and conceited regarding his anatomical talent and hypercritical of his peers. This is typical of one of the statements he made during his lectures. Gentlemen, I mentioned that I have already taught the science of anatomy to about 5,000 medical men now spread over the surface of the earth, and some of these have turned out most remarkable for their knowledge, genius, and originality, for they now occupy some of the most conspicuous and trying positions in Europe. He described the brilliant surgeon Robert Liston of Edinburgh thus: someone who plumes himself upon the wonderful strength of his hands and arms without pretension to his head. In fact, he was universally detested by the main body of anatomists in Edinburgh because of his brilliance in anatomy, his acid wit that he trained on them during his criticism. Fact number 3. He became the greatest anatomist of his generation despite having only one eye. He lost his left eye to smallpox as an infant. Fact number 4. Amongst other unattractive traits, Knox was one of the first to systematise and organise racial theory in a pseudoscientific manner in his book called The Races of Men. In this book, he suggested that man is completely defined by his racial characteristics, and that these characteristics made the different races antagonistic to each other and some dominant over others. He's been described as the founder of British racism. Although it sold well, The Races of Men was outsold by Knox's book on fishing. Fact number 5. Knox was a dandy. This is a description of the way he dressed for lectures. A dark puce or black coat, a showy vest often richly embroidered with purple across which gold chains hung in festoons. A high cravat white or in coloured stripes and the folds of which were passed through a diamond ring. A prominent shirt collar, delicately plated cambrics, watch seals and pendants, set off by dark trousers and shining boots completed his outer man, significantly gay if not loud in colouring. And also, Knox, in the highest style of fashion, with spotless linen frill and lace and jewellery redolent of a duchess's boudoir, standing in a classroom amid osseous forms, cadavera, and decaying mortality, was a sight to behold, and one assuredly never to be forgotten. Fact number 6. Knox lost his licence to teach anatomy in Scotland, and that's why he left Edinburgh. Knox was never brought to trial, and continued lecturing to students after Burke was tried and hung, and Hare released in 1829, but the stigma never really left him, and his class numbers fell away. He was finally driven from Edinburgh by being deprived of his licence to teach by the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. They found him guilty of falsifying a student certificate of attendance in exchange for money. This was not itself an uncommon practice in private schools, but in his case was leapt upon by those who wanted him out of Edinburgh, and he was effectively banned from teaching in Scotland. He left to go to London to pursue a career there. Fact number 7. He played the violin, and his violin can still be seen in the Burke and Hare case in the Surgeons' Hall Museums in Edinburgh.